I want to remind you the worship outline there is on the back of your program. You can follow along with that. We continue with our sermon series called The Games We Play, and we're having a lot of fun with this just in time for the Olympics, for the catastrophe of a Super Bowl that we just played a couple weeks ago, and just in time for the spring sports that are gearing up, a lot of baseball, a lot of soccer, a lot of momentum stepping up. Also, we're talking about games in the relational way. Now, a lot of these games are the not so good games where we're failing to be authentic, where we are instead being really manipulative with each other or deceitful. And Valentine's just came, and you know, maybe I'm sure many of you had beautiful Valentine's celebrations, but maybe it wasn't. And you can see the games that are being played instead of being honest and upfront and genuine with each other. So we're addressing them. We're letting God's word guide us. So we've been looking at Genesis and Jacob's story. Now Jacob is named Israel eventually, okay? So Jacob's the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abraham, who kind of God chose to start this whole thing. And so we've been looking at Jacob's story, and Jacob and Esau are the two main players in the beginning, and then the parents, Rebekah and Isaac, they get going in the story, and they're playing a whole bunch of games. And now today we're going to look at Jacob as he moves forward and starts playing some games with some distant relatives. But first what happened, so Esau and Jacob were in the womb yet, and they started playing games even there. Well, Jacob lost that game. So Esau won the being born first game, and he came out first, and so he got all the honor and all the glory and all the birthrights and the inheritance and all that stuff, and so that was like a big trophy for Esau. Jacob came out on his heel, right, grabbing right along. But then Jacob steps up the games, and he's like, I'm not going to be beat by this kid. And so next thing we know, Esau is hungry, right, and he comes in from the field. He's famished, and there's Jacob just sitting around stirring some lentil soup, the scripture says. It's a red stew, and it must be delicious. And Esau is so hungry that he's like, give me the soup. And Jacob's like, give me your birthright. Okay, so he's not being tricky, but he trades Esau's birthright for essentially a soup. It's absurd. It's like me saying, I'll give you a Snickers bar for your estate. So the game continues, because then Rebekah later in life steps in and helps Jacob trick Isaac, who is old and blind, into Isaac giving the blessing that belonged to Esau to Jacob instead. And so we talked about that last week. And so Jacob steals all the inheritance and all the honors. That's a big deal. Because what happens is Esau gets really angry. And Jacob gets word that, he kind of guesses, of course, Esau is going to be angry. So he kind of starts running. And Esau says, if I ever see that brother of mine again, I will kill him. I will end his life. I will destroy him and his family. And he's not just joking around. This isn't like an empty threat. So he's mad. So Jacob flees, and then along the way, I love this because Jacob, the game player, just keeps on playing games. You think maybe as he's running for his life that he would have thought, maybe I should just try to be straight up once and just be authentic and not try to hide behind the games. Now Jacob, even along his way, he has this encounter, he has this dream, and God kind of works through this dream and shows him some things that are going to happen. And this is Jacob's first real encounter with God himself. And so anyhow, Jacob wakes up though the next morning, and it's extraordinary, the audacity that Jacob has. So he wakes up, and instead of saying, Lord, you have shown me yourself, and I will follow you, all this stuff has been crazy, I give it up, and I'm choose you instead. You know what Jacob says instead? This is chapter 28, verse 20, just in case you don't believe me. It's so absurd. Actually, we do this a lot. But Jacob says, well, God, I'm not quite sure. Let's do this. I tell you what, if you make my life absolutely, completely awesome, if you bless it in every way and make it rich and beautiful and give me everything I want and, spoil me, then I'll think about making you my God. How about that? You show me the money, and then I will think about making you my God. The audacity of Jacob. He keeps playing these games, makes bargains with God. Well, finally, Jacob gets to Padan Aram. That's where he's headed. That's where his ancestors are from. And more games begin. So we look at this chapter 29, verse 1. Jacob got up from his feet from that place where he made a bargain with God. And then he set out for the land of the Easterners. He saw a well in the field in front of him, near which 3 flocks of sheep were lying down. That well was the source for their water, because the flocks drank from that well. So a huge stone covered the well's opening. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the well's opening, water the sheep, and return the stone to its place at the well's opening. So Jacob's, he's heading into town and he sees this well and he sees this great big rock on top of the well. Now the rock is significant because this well belonged to certain people. So there was a big rock on it that took several people to move, because they didn't want anyone just to come up and get the water from this well. So there's this big stone, and it took lots of people. So Jacob goes up to him, and he starts, having this casual conversation. Verse 4, Jacob said to him, "Where are you from, my brothers?" And they said, "We're from Haran." Verse 5, then he said to them, "Don't you know, or do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" And they said, "Yeah, we know him." And he said to them, "Is he well?" And they said, "He's fine. In fact, this is his daughter Rachel now coming with the flock." He said to them, "It's now only the middle of the day. It's not time yet to gather the animals. So water the flock and then go put them out in the pasture." So what's going on here? Jacob gets up there, he finds out who they are, and they're like, "Oh, yeah. So, in fact, there's Rachel. So she belongs to Nahor and to Laban, and that's her." Rachel, I always get this mixed up. Rachel is Laban's daughter, so here she comes. And really far off, Jacob was already getting excited. See, this is the love game going on here, because he sees Rachel coming over the hill, and he's like, "Ooh, Rachel." So, because look at what he says. He tries to say, it's middle of the day, so I tell you what, let's water your sheep real quick, and they need to go back out in the field, so water them real quick, and then you just skedaddle off. Because Jacob is really excited about Rachel coming over the hill. He doesn't know her yet, but what he sees, he likes, and he's like, I need some one-on-one time. So he's trying to get him out so he can be all alone with Rachel. And so Jacob, he's a tricky guy. So verse 8, though, they said to him, "We can't until all the herds are gathered. And then we roll away the stone from the well's opening and water the flock." So nice try, Jacob, but you're too early. So then while he was still talking to them, Rachel came from her father's flock, since she was a shepherd. Now this is unusual that Rachel's a shepherd, but it really, really catches Jacob's eye. She's a woman of character. So I love this part here. I'm going to tell you what's going on here. Verse 10, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his uncle, and the flock of Laban, Jacob came up, rolled the stone from the well's opening, and watered the flock from his uncle Laban. Now you know what's going on here, right? So Jacob finally sees Rachel face to face, and it's just like in the cartoons, where like the cartoon characters, like the skunks that chased after each other, or maybe it's Tom and Jerry. I don't think so. But anyhow, like the heart just like starts pounding, right? It like bounces out of the chest, and you can see this perfect shape of a heart, and then the jaw drops, and the tongue just rolls out, and there's like, "Ooh la la, lady!" That's what's going on with Jacob. Now we know that. I'm not just making this up. We know this. Because look what Jacob does. He comes up, it says in verse 10, Jacob came up, rolled the stone from the well's opening, and watered the flock the flock of his uncle Laban. It takes several men to roll this stone away, but Jacob is so excited. He's so struck by love. He just comes up and rolls that stone off, and he's like, "Ladies first," He is love struck. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to get her attention. So he rolls this stone off. And hopefully it doesn't hurt his back. But anyhow, Jacob doesn't stop there. He is so excited about this woman. Verse 11. So Jacob, he waters the flock, and then he walks up and he kisses Rachel, and then he wept out loud, it says. So Jacob first, he rolls the stone, then he starts kissing Rachel, and then he starts crying. That's one way to get a woman, I suppose. Verse 12, though, so then Jacob told Rachel that he was related to her father and that he was Rebekah's son. So she then ran to tell her father. When Laban heard about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran out to meet him. Laban embraced him, kissed him, and invited him into his house, where Jacob recounted to Laban everything that had happened. Laban said to him, "Yes, you are my flesh and blood." And we'll see in just a moment why he's like, "Yeah, you're related to us, I can already tell." Because here's where the real game begins. Second part of verse 14. I love this scripture. It's full. It's rich, isn't it? After Jacob stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to Jacob, "You shouldn't have to work for free just because you're my relative. Tell me what you would like to be paid." So Laban's saying, "Hey, look, you came out of nowhere. You're running from people and you're working for free. What do you want, big guy?" There's something going on here. He smells a fish. Okay, so now verse 16. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older was named Leah and the younger one Rachel. Leah had delicate eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and was good looking, especially to Jacob. So Jacob, verse 18, loved Rachel and said, "I will work for you for 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." So he's like, okay, gig's up. I like your daughter. I want to marry her, so I'll work for 7 years. Laban said, he's like, okay, I'd rather give her to you than any other man. So stay with me. Verse 20, so Jacob worked for Rachel for 7 years, but it seemed like only a few days because he loved her. Jacob said to Laban, "The time has come, give me my wife so that I may sleep with her." So Laban invited all the people in that place and prepared a banquet. Now look at what's going on here, what Laban does next. He's pulling the cards out and he's going to play a game. Verse 23, however, in the evening, lo and behold, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he slept with her. Now, I want to know one thing. How dark does a room need to be for that to happen? I mean, Jacob's already trying to kiss Rachel, and he doesn't notice there's a difference. Verse 24, Laban had given his servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her servant. In the morning, there she was, Leah. And so Jacob runs to Laban and he says, "What have you done to me? Didn't I work for you to have Rachel? Why did you betray me?" But Jacob, for good reasons, is absolutely beside himself. He's like, "What is going on, Laban? What'd you do this for?" So Laban said, "Well, where we live, we don't give the younger woman before the oldest." I don't know why he could have said that like year 3. Hey, by the way, this is a short change in plans. But instead he says, "Well, so complete the celebratory week with this woman, then I will give you this other woman too for your work." And then the caveat, if you work for me for 7 more years. So Laban's sweetening the deal. He's getting 14 years of service out of Jacob. So that is what Jacob did. He completed the celebratory week with this woman, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban had given his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her servant. Jacob slept with Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban 7 more years. And the plot just gets richer, because the scripture leaves us today by saying, and yep, he loved one more than the other. And we know how it goes with sisters. There's already a lot of competition in the older one. She's taller and she's got curly hair and whatever, and she's smarter, she can run faster. And now Jacob loves her more. That doesn't make anybody happy as far as sisters go. So we're looking at the story, though, and we're looking at what happened to Jacob. And, first reading, we're like, man, poor Jacob, right? He really gets tricked pretty seriously. He gets pretty betrayed. There he is. He's just trying to, get a wife, right? He's trying to run from his brother and make a new life in a foreign land. But if you look a little bit closer, there's a saying that we have that kind of matches what's going on here, and I love this picture. You're familiar with this. What goes around comes around, right? A saying that I heard when I was growing up a lot, it seemed like it was always at the track meet. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's all fun and games until someone gets their eye poked out, right? You see, this shouldn't be any surprise for Jacob at all. Jacob gets a taste of his own medicine, because this is the same Jacob who is the blessing stealer and the birthright stealer. This is the same Jacob who makes bargains with God, the same shifty, dishonest thief that we've read about before. What goes around comes around. You see, Jacob should have seen this coming. Now, we hear about a story in Matthew chapter 26, and I invite you, if you want to take a chance to check this out, you can also know that this is included in your worship outline this morning. There's a specific teaching that Jesus gives us that reminds us exactly what happened way, way, way back in the story of Jacob in his search for his dignity. So what happens in chapter 26 is Jesus knows that he's about ready to be arrested, he's about ready to be tried and killed, and then, of course, to the glorious resurrection. He knows this is coming. So he just gets done praying in the garden, he's with his disciples, and Judas, his betrayer, comes marching down the hill with this great big army because he's like ready to get some action going, and he brings this army up in front of Jesus and his disciples, and the disciples are panicking and like, what do? We weren't prepared for this. Jesus didn't teach us how to use the sword very well, and they're kind of freaking out. So this is this pinnacle moment where all the scenes are changing and everything is rearranging, and nobody really knows what's going on. And verse 51, chapter 26, finally one of the disciples gets a smart idea and says, you know what, Jesus didn't teach me this, but my dad showed me how to use the sword once. So one of those with Jesus reached for a sword, striking the high priest's slave, he cut off his ear. So, he might have been trying to do more, but he missed and he got his ear. But then Jesus says these words. He says, put the sword back in its place. You think Jesus would have been like, yeah, good shot, buddy. You better aim next time. He says, put the sword back in its place. And then these words, which we wish Jacob might have heard, that we can hear today. Jesus says, you see, all those who use the sword will die by the sword. All those who live by the sword will die by it. He says, do you think that I'm not able to ask my Father and he will send me more than 12 battle groups of angels right away? He says, but if I did that, how would scriptures be fulfilled that say that this, what's going on right here, should happen? Jesus is reminding us that if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. And he says, that's not how we're going to do this. There's something bigger, there's something more important going on here. But what essentially Jesus is talking about is that when we live by deceit, if we tend to be deceitful people, whether we struggle with being honest or upfront with other people, or we struggle with something else, then we will most likely live in a world where we experience people around us being really deceitful. If we have a hard time making commitments to other people, if we have a hard time being reliable to other people, whether they're friends, coworkers, spouses, family, it is very likely that you live by the sword, you die by the sword, that you will find and you will see a whole world and you will experience a whole world of those who are unreliable. John Maxwell writes a whole book about this, and he's talking about working with people. And he says, look, anything that you're struggling with, if you're a positive person, you're going to see a world full of positive people. But if you are dishonest, if you are, if you are not cool, if you're negative and you don't see things very well, that's the world you're going to see around you. You live by that, it will consume you. So Jesus is saying that. He's saying, look, it's easy to fight. Yeah, it's easy to pull out a sword, and hopefully it's easy to lop off someone's ear, but it's much more difficult to actually work through this and go through the pain of it. But oftentimes we don't learn Jesus' lesson. And so we were able to catch another glimpse of what that lesson that Jacob was playing and the what comes around goes around lesson. We were able to catch a glimpse of that. And so I want to take you on a journey, and I want you to see another jaw-dropping episode of us in real life. Check this out.
Oh, man. That was a brilliant performance, sir. Like that? Yeah, thank you. Did you like mine? I couldn't cry. I tried. I brought on a couple tears for you. It was sweat. My grandmother's sitting home watching Jerry Springer right now. So there's my autograph right in the center. There it is. The snake. This is a game for $1 million. I have one chance in my life at this. You should take every single advantage possible. If you don't, you're a fool. John called me before he left and was like, I've got to have any sort of leverage I possibly can. He said, outsmart and outthink. He's got to outplay everybody. And he's like, if you come down here, tell me my grandma died.
I know that John had to promise Krista and Sandra a lot in order for them to back us up to get rid of T.
I had to promise on my grandmother than them.
Oh, no, don't do that.
I had to.
She's looking down here.
I know, she'll forgive me. I had so much fun in explaining to Dee and Lil that Krista made me swear on my grandmother's grave, and I told them that it upset me so much to have to do that, and I was like, one of her last wishes was that I win.
Johnny Fairplay, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe you've seen that episode. I hope you caught that. So Johnny tells his co-players in the Survivor game, in order to get leverage to win, and he says, look, you got to play the game right, and you got to play all the cards and pull out all the stops, and you're a fool if you don't. Did you catch that? And he tells people that his grandmother has died. And then he offers a swear on his deceased grandmother that he would be loyal to a certain group. and then his friend comes and says, your grandmother died. This is the epitome of our scheming. This is us. We will do whatever it takes to get ahead. We will play any game that it takes, just like Laban, just like Jacob. They're going to play the game to get what we want. So Johnny Fairplay ends up getting third place in that Survivor game. And of course, media loves this guy, and he's sensational and causes a lot of drama. So they invite him back to Survivor Micronesia. But unfortunately, Johnny Fairplay was voted off in the first round in the second game. Enough people were like, enough of this joker, we're getting rid of him. But he continues to show up in a lot of documentaries, a lot of whatever you call that, real life TV. And his life is full of drama and deceit. He lives into the parody of his own name of Johnny Fairplay, being perhaps one of the most dishonest people that is highlighted in media today. Now, by the way, if you are related or a brother, a sister, or a mother, or a child of Johnny Fairplay, we can talk later and we can talk about who the real Johnny is, but that happened last week. But that's no joke. But you can see what's going on here. Like you live that kind of deceit. But why do we do this? We get excited. Why do we live into this sort of deceit? What's behind this? Is it because we just like to stir things up, make life a little bit interesting? I'm actually convinced that it's because we have this horrible and this creeping fear of being inadequate. We have this desperate need to have power in our lives to be able to manipulate others, because if we are just ourselves, if we just come directly forward and say, I am who I am what I am, and take me as I am, we are desperately afraid that we will not be enough unless we change or twist the situation to our advantage. If we don't play a game, essentially, then we believe that we will fail instead. I sincerely believe that as we look at the lineup of what Jacob all the way to us have done. If you look at Jacob's story, God promised and declared to Rebekah that Jacob, the younger one, will serve the older, and this is the way it's going to be. I have chosen him, and I know it's going to seem like a really, really absurd decision, but that's the way it's going to be. This was written in stone before Jacob and Esau were even born, and yet Jacob, feeling so inferior to his brother, and his mother feeling so inferior to the reign of Jacob and of Isaac and Esau, they, in the fear of that, they contort the situation, they manipulate others around them so they can make sure it happens because they don't trust God. Laban. Some guy wanders into town claiming that he's a relative and wants to marry his daughter and is offering absolutely no dowry. Laban is deathly afraid that he will be shamed in his community, that he will look like the guy who got tricked by some guy who walked in and stole his daughter, and so instead tricks Jacob into working for 14 years for his daughters to make up for that dowry, so that way he wouldn't feel like he was being taken advantage of. Johnny Fairplay pulls out of all the stops and lies to people that his grandmother is dead so that he can try to win this game. We're in the midst of the governor's and the senator's race right now, and it's interesting what happens, because it's more, when you're in the race like this, it's more about what you say you're going to do than what you're actually planning to do in your office. And we know that. And yet, when we hear what people promise, that's what we vote on because we're playing the game right along with them and we're eating right up. And it's not about what you do, it's what you say you're going to do in this game. Now, perhaps in Valentine's Day celebration, you just went on a new date and things are really exciting, or perhaps you went on a date with your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, or maybe you're even in the midst of reconciling or working through some really rocky things in your relationship right now. But mercy, the games that we play in our relationship. You're dating someone, well, who calls who first? How many texts should I send a day so I don't look too aloof but too desperate? How am I moving too fast? Well, maybe I should pull back and act like I really don't like that person so much. Familiar? We play these games. What if this person thinks I'm lame if I just be myself instead of trying to be this awesome hero? What if this person takes advantage of me if I open up too fast again? Or what if this person hurts me or causes me pain again if I am vulnerable to that person again? See, we play all these games and then we start twisting things to make sure that we're protected so we don't get hurt or so we don't get disappointed or so we don't have to be shameful. We play the game so that way we are protected. That's not what God's word says. You see, God has breathed word and instruction into this thing because it is real. And I invite you to turn to 2 Timothy with it this morning, or know that it is in your worship outline for you to study throughout the week. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verses 7, Paul writes to Timothy, and he's reminding Timothy of what's going on here. And he says, I'm reminded of your authentic faith, Timothy, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. I'm sure that this faith is also inside of you, because Timothy may be given some question, and he says, I'm sure it lives inside of you. Because of this, I'm reminding you to receive God's gift that is in you through the laying on of my hands. And then verse 7, he says, because God didn't give us a spirit that is timid, but one that is powerful, one that is loving, one that is self-controlled. See, Paul's reminding us that in the midst of our authentic faith, that we don't have to be fake, we don't have to play a game, that instead, Paul's saying, look, I laid my hands on you and I prayed you and I believe the Holy Spirit's working in you. You got to just let it, you got to just trust it. Because in the worship outline says this morning, trust what God has given us. Trust that what God has given us, the Holy Spirit, this naming of who we are, that it is far more powerful than anything that we could pretend to be. What God has given us is far more powerful than anything that we could pretend to be. We're also reminded in 1 John chapter 4, beautiful, beautiful words beginning in verse 18 through 19. We're told that there is no fear in love, because there is no fear in love because perfect love drives out fear. The person who is afraid has not been made perfect in love. We love because God first loved us. And we are told in this, quit being afraid that if you just be yourself, that you're going to fail, because there is no fear in perfect love. Let yourself be loved perfectly by God. Let that seek into your heart, that you can see that you don't have to be someone else in order to be what God has given us to be. Replace the fear of losing with the act of loving and being loved by God. Replace the fear of losing. Replace it with the act of loving and being loved. That you know that you don't have to play this game, you don't have to trick people, you don't have to finagle your way through your success. Instead, we are invited to seek what God is giving us, to let that be powerful in our lives, and to let authenticity and love reign in who we are and how we are to others. Let us practice this. Let this be true in our lives and our hearts. Let us pray.